Right, should we see if that's any better?
Okay, can you hear us now, Jess? So for our co-pilot.
Just a bit of just a technical problem.
Okay, if you can hear us now, just give us a tick.
It's a thumbs up signal.
And we'll then start again. Oh, here we go.
Yep. Let's hope we can be heard now.
Excellent. Right. Okay. Okay, so we are on. Sorry about that, everyone. Okay,
yes.
We'll start again. Okay. Welcome to Lunchtime Live. You've joined us today for a live basic bookkeeping Q&A with me. I'm Adrian from the comms team here at FreeAgent, and with our excellent Chief Accountant Emily, who will be answering all your questions. As I said previously when you couldn't hear us, we'll be taking all questions about sort of bookkeeping, business bookkeeping, using FreeAgent to manage your books, anything on those sort of on those topics and lines. So if there's something that you'd really like to ask us, or you need some guidance on, or you'd like a bit of insight about, just ask us. There is a little Q&A button which should either be on the top right of the screen or on the left, and if you click that, you'll get a menu opened, and just write down your question there, and we'll get it immediately, and we'll answer them as when we get them.
We certainly will.
Brilliant. I have a few sort of general questions that I'm going to be asking Emily, just sort of for for kind of background and to sort of flesh the picture out a little bit about bookkeeping, kind of general mistakes people make, and what a good bookkeeping system kind of looks like. So we'll explore that in some depth. But as I said, if there's anything that's particularly specific that you'd like to ask us about a particular issue, then just write them down and we will get to them as and when we can.
We certainly will.
Brilliant. Well, I think first of all for today, Emily, we'll just go through a few examples of kind of basic mistakes that people make with their bookkeeping. Maybe they're in business already, they have a system in place, but they're not doing it as well as they could be. So what's kind of the big sort of stumbling blocks and mistakes that people make with the books?
Well, the first and most important point is to make sure that you're entering all your bank transactions correctly. Make sure that your accounts say that what's going in and out of the bank actually is what's going in and out of the bank according to your bank statement. I am an accountant. I've had 15 years experience working with small businesses, and it's actually surprising how few businesses do have an accurate picture of what's going in and out of their bank account. Now, the reason why that's a problem is because, well, if you get a visit from a HMRC inspector, the first thing they'll look at is whether your bank balance is accurate. Because if it isn't, they might suspect that you're not telling them about all your income, and they might start saying they want some more tax off of you, which isn't good news. Secondly, if you don't keep an accurate picture of what's going in and out of your business bank account, then you could find that you've got less cash than you think you have. You could think that you've got a fair bit of cash left at the end of the month to pay your bills, to pay your tax and what have you, but actually that cash isn't there. It's just what your books say is there. So you need to make sure that that's accurate. And the way a lot of people get that wrong is either when you're doing your books to miss out a particular kind of transaction, such as transfers between bank accounts or bank charges or bank interest, and that all mounts up. Or to record money going in and out of the business in another way as bank transactions. So for example, if you spend your own money on a business cost, that still needs to get recorded in your accounts because it is a cost to the business. The business could pay you back for that. But it's not money that's immediately left your business bank account. So something, a good example of that would be business use of home, or would be mileage travelled in your own car, or if you've actually parted with physical cash, like going down to the train station and buying a ticket to go and see a client, and you paid for that using your own credit card. That isn't money that's come out of the business's bank account, but it's still a cost to the business. So you need to make sure you record it in the right place, which is My Money Expenses in FreeAgent. So that's one, is getting the bank account wrong. Secondly is not keeping track of when your customers pay you. So that's kind of a corollary of not tracking everything coming in and out of your bank account, but not keeping track of who's paid you and who hasn't. then you can think that invoices have been paid when they haven't. So you're effectively doing work for free if you do that, which isn't a good idea. And also, if you think customers haven't paid you when actually they have, then you could have a very awkward conversation. So, for example, if I am a supplier with Muddley Books and Adrian is my customer, I ring him up and I say, Adrian, why didn't you pay me for that invoice? And Adrian says, Emily, I did pay you for that invoice. What do you mean I didn't pay you for that invoice? And then if Adrian wants a piece of work, another piece of work done by a supplier like me, he's probably not going to come to me because he remembers that awful, awkward conversation. And he thinks, well, if she gets her books wrong, what else is she going to get wrong? Can I actually trust her with my business? So it can lose your customers, which is not a good idea either. The third area that an awful lot of people get wrong is your VAT. Not for nothing does my husband call that very awkward tax. It is not an easy tax to handle. Effectively, if your business is registered for VAT, you're acting as an unpaid tax collector for dear Mr. Osborne. You are adding up the VAT that your customers pay you, potentially taking off VAT you can reclaim on bills from your suppliers, and you're paying that to the government. So you are working out how much tax to pay, you're paying it over when it comes to VAT. But it's amazing how many people get that wrong and pay the wrong amount of VAT or claim back the wrong amount of VAT. Make sure that you do add that up correctly for your business. And FreeAgent actually handles VAT really, really well, because you can tell it that you're invoice accounting or cash accounting or on the flat rate scheme, and it will help you work everything out correctly. And you can file your VAT returns online through FreeAgent, so it can really help. But it is a piece of software. It's no substitute for a human. So you do still need to make sure that you are recording everything correctly in FreeAgent, and that's where your accountant comes in to help.
I was going to say, actually, on a sort of a similar note, do you think that another sort of big basic mistake that people can make with their bookkeeping is just not keeping on top of their paperwork, like the individual bits of, like, whether it's receipts or bills or whatever it is.
Oh yes, absolutely, Adrian. That is a big mistake that a lot of accountants see, is that small business owners just bundle everything up into a box or a bag and just hand it over to your accountant at year end. Well, I would very strongly say don't do that. Firstly, because you're going to run up a terrifically large accountancy bill if you do that. Secondly, you're not going to have a good relationship with your accountant. Accountants love to get a nice, neat set of accurate books. Accountants do not like a bag of bits to sort out. And thirdly, how are you going to know anything about how your business is doing if you don't arrange your paperwork and record it? Because, for example, if you don't add up the money coming into and going out of your business, you don't know what what's in your bank account and what isn't. You don't know what you've spent on your business, and those costs all mount up. In terms of your relationship with your accountant, there is a great deal that a good accountant can do for a business. Things like advising whether you're charging enough, whether you're incurring more expenses than you need to. For example, if you're buying lots of different pieces of software when there's one piece of kit that'll do everything, your accountant might well be able to help you with that. And also, as I say, acting as a part-time FD, for example, saying something like, well, you're paying loads of money in bank charges. Have you thought of restructuring your finance so that you don't have so much in unauthorized overdrafts? Have you looked at crowdfunding? Have you looked at invoice financing? Have you looked at whatever it may be? Your accountant will be able to advise on all of that, but they're going to have their hands tied behind their back and their feet tied together if they're not working from accurate figures to start with. So if they don't know, for example, how quickly your money comes in from your customers or what you pay to your suppliers, they won't know. They won't be able to give you that kind of advice. I can remember, for example, from my practice days, I had a client who ran a pub. He was trying to run the pub single-handed because he caught his manager with his fingers in the till. So he was trying to do absolutely everything. And at the end of every VAT quarter, all I would get from him would be just a huge cardboard box filled with receipts and filled with details of days' takings in no particular order, just all shoved in anyhow. And because he was a heavy smoker, the papers all reeked of cigarette smoke. So not unnaturally, I hated doing that work. And I don't think he got the best service that he could have done if he'd managed to keep a nice, neat set of records. And please rest assured, I did try and teach him to keep a nice, neat set of records, and he couldn't be bothered. then I would have been able to give him a much better service and his bills wouldn't have been so high. So you'll save your business money on accountants' fees. You'll have a much more firm grasp of how your business is doing for money in, money out. And also, as I say, you'll vastly improve your relationship with your accountant. You'll get a much better service from them.
A much deeper service as well, like, they'll be able to just tell you more about, more useful information about your business rather than just the nuts and bolts stuff. And
yes,
I think that's pretty much in the interest of everyone. So.
Well, yes, exactly, yes. Because if your accountant hasn't got to spend time ticking and bashing and adding things up, then they can give you useful information about, for example, where you can save tax. I mean, I'm certainly not advocating doing like the HSBC bosses and squirreling money away. Okay, but the HSBC bosses might have been doing and squirreling money away in all sorts of strange locations, but there are plenty of perfectly legal and ethical ways to save tax.
Well, I think it's all about sort of paying the right amount of tax and making sure that you're not paying the wrong amount. So so that's the sort of the level I think that
exactly
that an accountant's going to be able to do if they're not spending hours and hours going
adding
through
up
your
your
receipts.
Numbers. Yes, exactly. Because as I say, there are plenty of perfectly legal and ethical ways to save tax, and one of them is making sure you track all your costs. So, for example, do not forget to include things like train tickets that you pay for on a personal credit card when you're going to visit a client. And remember that if you're using something like FreeAgent, it's fully optimized for mobile. So when you're standing on a train platform waiting for your train, you can make best use of your time by recording that ticket and photographing it on your mobile as you stand there. Then if the ticket barrier at the other end swallows your ticket, doesn't matter, you've still got proof of it, proof that is acceptable to HMRC, so that cost will not get missed out of your books.
Right, so we've actually got a great blog post about HMRC, whether they accept scan receipts or not. So we'll post that up onto the Google Plus page.
Yes,
so you can read through that. That should be pretty useful stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered obviously a few examples of basic mistakes that people tend to make with their bookkeeping. What in your opinion, what would a great bookkeeping system look like? If someone was going to come in and say, right, I'm going to do this right and well, what would they have to implement in order for that to be the case?
Okay, well, I'm not simply going to say a great bookkeeping system looks like FreeAgent, because although it totally does, but the answer is that it's got to be a system that's right for you and your business, and FreeAgent is not necessarily going to be right for everybody. If you sell a huge quantity of different kinds of goods, for example, then FreeAgent's probably not for you. But in terms of what does a good bookkeeping system looks like, well, it needs to keep track of all the important information for your particular business. So whether that's movement of goods in and out, whether that's movement of cash in and out, which of course is important for everybody, whether it's tracking expenses you've incurred and rebilling those onto your clients, it's basically got to work for you and your business. And that means not any unnecessary bells and whistles, as well as doing everything you need to. Because one approach I've seen some accountants take is just give a big bookkeeping system to all their clients. And I think that's a mistake, because the smaller business clients won't need all those bells and whistles, all those reports. And if you're not used to if you are not used to dealing with a bookkeeping system, then it's going to confuse you rather than help you. So a system that is neither too big nor too small for your business's needs. Make sure that you can track everything you need to and do it easily. That's the next key point. It should be easy to use. It should be straightforward to use. You shouldn't have to be scratching your head every time you do your books. That's going to put you off doing them. It should be secure. Your data must be safe, because this is crucial information about your business. Online accounting software, we use the same kind of encryption as the banks do, and the data is stored safely in former nuclear bunkers. So it is very, very safe.
Yeah, and that's totally true as well.
Yeah, that is completely true. Yeah, that isn't a shaggy dog story. That is completely true. Whereas if you have, for example, your books on on just one computer, what happens if that computer's lost, stolen, corrupted, broken, whatever it may be? Your data's gone. You need to make sure that you're backing up your data securely. If you use something like that, use perhaps an online backup system. So that's one point. So it needs to be the right size and the right functionality for you and your business. It needs to be easy to use. It needs to be secure. There shouldn't be any duplication of data. So, for example, you shouldn't have to create an invoice and then go somewhere else and write up that your customer owes you more money. The simple act of creating an invoice should add that on to the list of money you're owed by your customers. So there shouldn't be any need to put the same thing in twice anywhere in your system. And it should work smoothly. It should just work. There shouldn't be any hitches or glitches, or it shouldn't keep logging you out or anything like that. It should just work. I mean, this is in an ideal world. Of course, anything built by humans is never going to be perfect. So unfortunately, it's a case of strive for perfection, settle for excellence in that area. But it should be, it shouldn't keep crashing on you. I can certainly remember early online accounting software. I won't name and shame it, but it used to crash every 5 seconds, and obviously that's not ideal. You want something that just works. Mm-hmm. So as I say, right functionality, right size for you and your business, just work, data safe and secure, no duplication of data, and doesn't keep crashing every 5 seconds. Excellent.
And I think as well, you know, it's probably a good idea as well to to go out and actually explore around and see what suits you and your business as well.
Adrian, yes.
Get referrals, go out and ask people and see what other small businesses, see what they use, just to get a picture around it as well, because we could quite easily just tell you to go and use FreeAgent straight away.
We're not going to say that.
But go out and the best people that you will find to ask about what is good for a small business are other small business owners. Yes. And you go out and ask on Twitter or Facebook or wherever it is, and they will be more than happy to tell you about what they use, what they haven't used, what they like, what they don't. So I'd probably recommend doing that.
I'd agree that wholeheartedly, because as I say, one size does not fit all when it comes to bookkeeping software. Every business is different, every business is unique, every business owner is unique. So make sure that what you're getting fits your needs and your businesses. Take your time to trial a few systems, see what your accountant recommends, but don't go entirely with that, because remember, your accountant knows things like double entry bookkeeping backwards, and that's something you should never have to learn. So if you think your accountant's giving you something that doesn't suit your business, do, as Adrian quite rightly says, shop around.
Excellent. We've got a question from Margaret. Thank you very much, Margaret. She says, I've been doing some admin work which is separate to my business. Do I have to register that separately? Also, do I claim expenses working from home separately, or can I wrap it up with my claim for my registered business?
Okay, Margaret. Thank you. Well, thank you for the question, Margaret. In terms of, do you have to register that separately? It depends, to be honest, what your actual trade is, Margaret, and how much the admin work is. I'm going to assume here you're a sole trader. If the admin work is a completely different trade from your business, then strictly speaking, yes, you should register that separately. But it does depend on how different it is. For example, my father, all his working life, was a pharmacist, and he was also a writer. Two completely different trades, because he was writing about antique shotguns, not about pharmacy. So he, or rather I on his behalf, used to do two different sets of self-employed accounts. So if there is a big difference between the admin work and your regular trade, Margaret, then yes, you should register your admin work as a separate trade. Otherwise, bundle them in together. In terms of your working from home expenses, you should put that in your accounts as a cost of running your business. And hopefully, if I ask Adrian and Jess very nicely, they will put up our infographics along the lines of what you can claim when you're working from home, because it is different for company directors and for sole traders. So as I say, if I ask Adrian and Jess nicely, hopefully they'll put those two links.
Yeah, as Em says, we've got two of those, one for sole traders, one for limited companies. But they kind of go through not just what you can claim, but especially when it comes to the business use of your home as well, for like your light, your water, the rest of it. It kind of goes into a bit of detail how to break that down.
Yes, exactly.
In terms of the rooms that you're using and how much you're using them for as well. So hopefully that'll be useful for you.
Yeah. Okay, Margaret says it's in connection with a non-profit residents association. Okay, Margaret, that accounting actually gets a little bit specialised. Then if it's a non-profit residents association, I would advise you to have a chat with your accountant about that, because I don't want to give you the wrong advice. I don't want to say something that's misleading. So I would have a chat with your accountant just to make sure.
Okay. Thanks. For everyone else that's in viewing as well, if you've got a question that you'd like to ask, just post it up, and I'll answer it. We'll probably be going for another sort of 10 minutes or so. Yep. So 10 minutes to get in and ask us. I think while we're waiting for that, I'm going to follow up and say, if I'm using my own bookkeeping system, so Excel spreadsheet, whatever it is, and I'm looking to switch, or I'm looking to make a change to something a bit better and fuller, when is the best time to do that?
At the end of your company's year is the answer. So at the end of your business's year. So when you're in business, you always prepare accounts to a particular date every year. That's called your year end or your accounting year end. And that is the best time to change. The reason is because you or your accountant will be taking the accounts for a particular year to put on your tax return. And it's always easier to pull those together for a year if all the records for that year are in the same place, if they're not sort of half on one system and half on the other. So the easiest time to switch is the end of the year, your year. Your accounting year, but you can often switch at a different time, perhaps the end of a VAT quarter, or perhaps when you're halfway through the year. But the end of the year is going to be the easiest because it means that you get all your records together in one place for each year individually.
Okay.
Yeah.
I suppose a kind of in the same vein question, but got me going forward a little bit. If I'm starting a new business, so I've never had to do this before.
No.
When should I start collecting stuff like receipts, paperwork, all that kind of stuff to do my bookkeeping? Is it a case of do I just wait as I come in, or is it right from day one?
Right from day one. In fact, right from day -1, I would say. As soon as you incur a cost for your business, hang on to that receipt, even if you haven't made any sales yet. The reason why I say that is because because when you actually do start to trade, when you do start to make sales, you can actually put any costs that you incurred for the business before you made your first sale into your books and use those to reduce your profit and pay less tax. So it is a good idea to do that. There are a couple of rules. Firstly, you mustn't have incurred the cost more than 7 years ago. And secondly, the cost must actually be something that you could include in your accounts if you've been in business at the time you incurred it. So for example, if I'm thinking about setting up my own business and I decide to get some business cards printed, I can include the cost of having those business cards printed in my accounts when I do my first set of accounts after I've started to trade. If, on the other hand, I decide to take Adrian out for a meal to thank him for being a fantastic co-pilot, that's not actually an expense that I would be entitled to claim tax relief on unless Adrian is one of my employees. So I can't put that into the business. So it has to be within the last 7 years, and it has to be something that you would have been allowed to claim for had you been in business at the time. So absolutely, start collecting your receipts as soon as you incur a cost, and make sure you organise them carefully. Was that what you were just about to ask? I
was going to ask a bit more about the things that you bought for your business that you incurred before you started. Would that include something that you potentially bought for yourself without a view of having it for a business? I'm thinking more about like a computer that you bought 3 years ago that you then start using for your business afterwards.
Very interesting, very interesting. What you have to do with something like that, say a piece of equipment that you bought a few years ago for your family, and then you start making use of it in your business, you can include part of that, the value of that computer, but it's a little bit tricky because you have to, at the starting point of your business, you have to work out what your computer's worth, not what it cost. So you need to go on something like eBay and see what are people selling comparable computers for. And then you take that value, which is your market value, and you multiply it by the percentage that you're going to use the computer for business. So say 3 years ago, Adrian bought a computer and he is going to start a business now, and he's going to use that computer 60% for business. So he has to go on eBay, look for similar computers and find out what they're worth, multiply that value by 60%, that's the amount he can start getting tax relief on.
Okay.
Yeah. And I say start getting tax relief because in that particular case, because it's a piece of equipment, it's treated slightly differently for tax from a day-to-day running cost. You get what's called capital allowances on the value of that. But because it's something that you've previously used privately, you don't get all of it at once for capital allowances like you would for a brand new asset. You have to only take a little of it each year, and it's usually 18%. So you work out the value of the asset, you multiply that by the proportion you're going to use it for business, and then you get 18% of that cost for tax relief.
Okay. I think if there's any kind of sort of accounting terms that we're using that you're not particularly familiar with as well, we actually do have a glossary on our website which kind of lists them through and gives a sort of an overview about what all of them are. So
exactly, because things I've just been saying, like capital allowances and tax relief and assets and things like that, if that is accountantese, I'm sorry, but as Adrian quite rightly says, we have a translation in the glossary, so hopefully that'll help.
We'll post a link through to that on the page as well. So hopefully that'll help kind of humanize it a little bit more.
Are you suggesting I'm a robot or whatever it was Austin Powers called his first wife?
I am making no comments.
Full marks for tact, Adrian.
But yeah, as I said, we have a glossary, and hopefully that will help out. But I think as is always the case with any of these things, if there's still something that you're not quite 100% on, you need a little bit more, it is always a good idea to speak to your accountant as well, because they are trained in this sort of stuff and they know what they're talking about. Absolutely. So they'll be able to give you that kind of a guidance. Okay, we've got about sort of 4 minutes left, I think. So as I said, any more questions, just pop them through. But what I'm going to be asking probably finally is, why is it so important to do your bookkeeping regularly? Because I suppose if someone comes in and says, I'm running a new business, but my tax return is not due for 10 months. I don't need to do anything until then. That's fine. I'll do it in 9 months and it'll be fine.
Well, the thing is that you're not only doing your books in order to work out your accounts for your tax return, you're doing them so that you know whether your customers have paid you on time, whether you've got bills mounting up that you have to pay your suppliers, whether you're in danger of running out of cash, whether you can also use them to think about forward planning in terms of, well, can I afford to recruit a new member of staff? Can I afford to rent a studio? Can I afford to start looking at different markets, perhaps abroad, or perhaps with a slightly different product or service? So in terms of day-to-day, it's very, very useful to have up-to-date, accurate bookkeeping. Plus the fact, the longer you leave your bookkeeping, the harder it's going to feel to actually sit down and do it. Now, here at FreeAgent, in January, we had loads and loads of questions from people who were trying frantically to do their tax returns at the last minute. It was panicking. They were panicking. They were frightened. They were worried that they wouldn't get everything done correctly. Whereas if you do it a little bit at a time as you go along, like your mother always used to tell you about doing music practice, little bit of at a time as you go along means that by the end it's much, much easier. Try and make it a habit. Build some time into your regular weekly routine to do your bookkeeping, whether you get it out of the way on Monday morning, whether you decide to do it on Wednesday lunchtime, whatever it may be. Plan a slot into your diary for your bookkeeping and keep to it, because as I say, the longer you leave it, the harder it will get. A little bit, little and often does the trick in this case. Little bit every time. It'll mean it's much less of a chore when you do get to it. It'll mean you haven't got that mad panic at the last minute. It'll also mean your books are much more likely to be accurate, because if you're recording everything as it happens, you'll remember what it is. For example, if you do a train journey now, and then you're only writing up your books in 10 months' time, how are you going to remember whether that train journey was to go and visit a client or whether it was to go and see Great Auntie Mavis? You are not going to remember that. So you need to do your books while everything is fresh in your mind. So less panic, much less likelihood that you'll make a mistake, and you've got up-to-date, accurate financial information about your business. So bookkeeping is for life, not just for your tax return.
Excellent. And we do, we've said before, we think about an hour a week is probably the optimum kind of time to do this. We've got we've got a few blogs and a white paper as well, which is all about kind of what to do within that hour a week, when you're going to do it, and sort of a, not quite a checklist, but like a sort of a few ideas for what that kind of a bookkeeping system would look like, which we'll also put onto the Google Plus page. And I think we've also got a little bit that talks about sort of basic kind of 2-minute tasks that you do as well, kind of as and well, which aren't necessarily part of that hour, but will be.
That's things like tracking your train tickets when you're standing on the station waiting for your train. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I think that's probably about it for today. I think we've covered quite a lot. Thanks very much, Em. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Adrian.
Just said to anyone that's coming and watching this afterwards, this goes up on YouTube, on our YouTube page afterwards. So if you bear through the first half a minute of silence, then hopefully it'll all make sense. If you come back and look at the Google Plus page that this is on, so let's just type in FreeAgent into Google Plus and you'll get to us. That'll have all of the resources that are on the side that we've been talking about. So that's the you know, the hour a week stuff, bits about
the infographics, yeah,
that kind of thing will all be there. We do hold regular text Q&As up on social media as well, usually weekly. We're not too sure whether we're doing one or not next week at the right time, but they are usually, as a rule of thumb, at 10 o'clock in the morning, UK time on a Wednesday. And we hold them up here on Google Plus and also on Facebook as well. So if you go to FreeAgent app, all one word, on Facebook, you'll find us there, and you'll be able to click on the events tab and see what's coming up. But they are usually weekly. We do try and do the Lunchtime Live video ones that you're seeing at the moment. We usually try and do them monthly if we can. So hopefully there'll be another one of these coming up sometime in March.
Indeed.
But we'll post details up on our social media pages as and when we have it. So you're here on Google Plus, you know how to find us here. We've just told you how to find us on Facebook. We're also on Twitter. We've got a really active Twitter feed as well. If you just type in @FreeAgent, you'll get to us there. We also post stuff on LinkedIn. That's FreeAgent there as well. So if you're not following us on any of them, then please do, and you'll get all of our news and kind of updates. And we do try to post kind of useful stuff that small businesses will like as well. So infographics, articles, that kind of insights into running a small business. So if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff, then we do recommend please do follow us. I think as well, very finally, we've been talking about bookkeeping, basic bookkeeping today. If you're not using FreeAgent yet, and you're interested in some of the stuff we've been talking about, please do have a look. We offer a 30-day free trial, so no obligation. Just sign up, have a play around, and see if it suits your requirements and what you need a bookkeeping system to do for you. I really recommend doing that, and go on to social media and ask people about it if you need any more.
Absolutely.
And if you are a FreeAgent subscriber, thank you very much. And we also run a referral scheme as well. So if you like FreeAgent, you really like what it does for you, and you know anyone else who you think would like it too, then you should have your own individual referral code. And if you pass that on and that person then goes on to subscribe, then you'll both get 10% off your bill, and that's cumulative as well. So the more people that you refer to us, the more money you get off per month.
Absolutely right.
So hopefully that will be of interest to you. Okay, I think that's it for today. Thank you very much for coming and watching, asking questions, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.